Hey guys, tonight we're stepping barefoot onto the blistering sands of ancient Persia, where the sun doesn't just bake the land, it practically threatens to erase it. You're squinting into the white glare of a landscape so dry, even shadows seem to evaporate. The air? It's like opening an oven and stepping inside. And yet, impossibly, someone offers you a bowl of ice. Not just cool water, ice. In July. In a place where rain forgets to fall for years. How is that even real? You probably won't survive this story if you're expecting something sensible, because what these ancient engineers pulled off, without electricity, compressors, or even metal fans, might break your brain a little. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's listening from a snowstorm and who's sweating in their pajamas. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking across the plateau of Persia, somewhere around 400 BCE. Beneath your feet, sand grits into your sandals, and every breath feels like it's drying your insides. But up ahead, jutting out of the landscape like a spaceship made of clay, is a yakhchal. No, that's not a sneeze. It's the original Persian refrigerator. It stands maybe 10 meters high, smooth and conical like an upside-down beehive. The walls? Mud brick, but not your backyard variety. These are made from a special mixture of sand, clay, lime, goat hair, and ash, baked in the desert sun until they're practically fossilized. This stuff is so tough it laughs in the face of earthquakes. And it's not just strong, it's smart. It breathes. The walls absorb moisture and radiate heat away. You step inside, and suddenly the world changes. The air chills. Your sweat starts to cool on your back. You're inside what amounts to a prehistoric air conditioner, and at the center, surrounded by shade and silence, is a pit. At the bottom? Ice. Actual blocks of ice. They call it the ice pit, and no, it's not sorcery. It's just physics, and a touch of genius. Here's how it worked. During frigid winter nights, water was channeled into shallow pools near the yakhchal. The desert gets cold, seriously cold, at night, dropping below freezing. The water turns to ice. At dawn, the ice is hauled into the yakhchal and layered with straw for insulation. Repeat every night until you've got a year's supply of ice stored underground. Still not impressed? Fine. Let's add wind catchers to the mix. These are tall, vertical towers with directional openings that capture even the faintest breeze. Think of them as the original ceiling fans, but instead of moving air around a room, they funnel it downward into the yakhchal or a building cellar. The airflow cools the space by evaporation and convection. And this wasn't a one-off invention. You see them on mosques, homes, marketplaces, anywhere someone might want a breath of cool air in an oven-like world. Historians still argue whether wind catchers were a purely Persian innovation or borrowed from earlier Mesopotamian structures. What's less debatable is how obsessively clever the Persians were in scaling them. Some had multiple shafts, each angled precisely based on wind patterns. Others included internal water channels to double down on cooling. No electricity. No moving parts. Just mud, geometry, and sheer audacity. You lean against one of the walls and notice how thick it is, sometimes over 2 meters. These thick walls insulate like a dream, holding the chill like a thermos from the future. And yes, the layout was strategic. The yakhchal was always built away from sunlight, often nestled in the shade of a wall or partially underground. Gravity did the work, drawing warm air up and letting cool air settle. By now, you're squinting at the details and thinking, okay, fine, but where'd they learn this stuff? And honestly, that's part of the mystery. Ancient Persian engineers, particularly during the Achaemenid era, were obsessed with environmental manipulation. They built qanats, underground aqueducts that stretched for miles to deliver water across deserts. So, the logic follows, if you can move water through mountains, why not preserve it too? Quirk alert, some Persians didn't just store water, they flavored it. Imagine rosewater ice on a summer day, pulled from a mud brick dome under the earth. There are scattered records of herbal infusions being frozen into blocks and used both for cooling and medicinal purposes. So, while you're sweating through your synthetic gym shorts in the 21st century, someone 2,500 years ago was probably reclining on a carpet sipping chilled mint water. As you walk out into the light again, you notice something else. These cooling structures weren't hidden. They were civic pride points. Every respectable city had one. Some were royal and elaborate. Others more communal. But the fact remained, ancient Persia knew how to chill. One last bizarre nugget before we move on. Some believe yakhchals may have doubled as secret burial vaults during emergencies, when the ground was too hard or time too short. No definitive evidence, but some archaeological digs have unearthed human remains near or within these pits. Historians still argue whether this was intentional repurposing or just unfortunate timing. Anyway, you brush the dust off your tunic and keep walking. The sun is still relentless, but now you carry a strange, cold comfort, the knowledge that, somehow, people figured out how to outsmart the desert. You're trudging into the city now, yes, still ancient Persia, but instead of a lone yakhchal in the sand, you're surrounded by thick-walled homes, domed rooftops, and those same towering wind catchers peeking above like chimneys wearing fancy hats. A goat bleats somewhere nearby. Someone's frying onions. And somewhere, behind a shaded wall, a child giggles as he splashes a fist-sized chunk of ice into a clay bowl of syrup. Ice. Again. You're starting to suspect this isn't a weird exception, it's a way of life. In fact, as you follow the winding alleys, you spot something odd, a long receipt nailed to the wall of a shady courtyard. Except it's not for groceries, it's tax records, etched into wet clay and baked hard. And guess what some folks paid their taxes in? Not gold. Not wheat. Bricks. Turns out, being a bricklayer in ancient Persia wasn't just sweaty manual labor. It was practically an elite profession. The empire needed a constant supply of mud bricks, not only to build homes and palaces but to maintain and expand its massive network of refrigeration structures. These weren't casual weekend projects. Constructing a proper yakhchal required precise angles, chemical knowledge of materials, and an almost theatrical patience with drying times. It took dozens of specialists, from lime mixers to straw weavers to wind direction surveyors. And when you realize that a well-made yakhchal could last centuries, even enduring invasions and earthquakes, it makes sense that good masons were worth their weight in, well, frozen apricots. Yes, frozen apricots. Because here's another twist, ice wasn't just stored. It was used. Not for preserving fish, Persia didn't really do sushi. It was for luxury, status, ceremony, bragging rights. Weddings served chilled sherbet. Wealthy merchants packed fruit in snow to transport it fresh over miles. Some rulers demanded a frozen treat after hunts, even in the middle of the desert, just to make a point. Historians still argue whether Persian royalty actually had an organized ice courier system, a caravan dedicated solely to transporting insulated snow from mountain to palace. Some claim these stories are exaggerated, but the records are oddly specific: goatskin-wrapped bricks of ice, replaced every 10 miles, carried beneath canopies to minimize melt. It's all very diva behavior. But then again, you'd be demanding frozen pomegranate juice too if you just conquered Babylon. Meanwhile, the average city dweller didn't need a personal yakhchal. Communal versions existed, like public water fountains, only colder. You'd bring your clay jug, pay a small fee or offer labor, and leave with a slosh of ice-cold water. On feast days, some villages even made ice cream analogues: snow mixed with crushed dates, saffron, or fermented grape syrup. Honestly, it sounds suspiciously like an artisanal popsicle. And it wasn't just about staying cool. Ice had deeper meaning. In Zoroastrian tradition, purity was linked to coolness. Fire was sacred, yes, but balanced by the cleansing chill of cold water. So storing snow wasn't just smart, it was spiritual. You weren't just fighting heat. You were maintaining cosmic order. Now, here's something weirder. In the administrative archives of Persepolis, one of the Persian Empire's glittering capitals, there are detailed records of seasonal ice festivals. These weren't your average "hey, it's hot, let's chill" affairs. They involved music, poetry recitals, and even theatrical reenactments of the battle between fire and frost. Children were crowned ice princes. People smeared mint oil behind their ears. It was half celebration, half magic show, and yes, it absolutely included juggling. You keep walking, and at the edge of town you spot a massive mud brick platform being restored. Workers hum as they slap clay into wooden molds. A child dips his toes into a runoff pool and shrieks with laughter. The foreman is arguing about which angle will catch the prevailing breeze best. He's not guessing. He has a scroll tucked under his arm filled with wind data collected over 20 years. This isn't superstition. It's climate engineering. The Persians also experimented with subterranean cooling systems. Qanats, those underground water channels we mentioned, weren't just for irrigation. Some homes had a shaft from the qanat passing beneath the floor, creating a sort of cold draft hallway. You sit in a shallow depression in the floor, called a hauskna, and cool air rises around you like an invisible mist fan. It's the original chill lounge. And yes, people took naps there. There are even fringe theories, brace yourself, that the royal archive chambers were partially refrigerated. Some fragments of fire-damaged scrolls show uneven burning, as if stored in naturally cool, damp spots. Was that an accident of geology? Or did Persian architects intentionally chill their record rooms to slow decay? Historians still argue whether these rooms were passive coolers or just well-placed basements, but the idea of an ancient library with climate control. Honestly, pretty rad. Let's not forget medicine. You duck into a small apothecary's shop and find rows of dried herbs, ceramic jars, and yes, a half-melted block of ice nestled in a woven basket. The elderly healer beside it tells you, or through a translator, that ice is essential for treating heat stroke, fevers, and demon possession. Okay, the last one is more poetic than scientific, but still, the logic tracks. Cold stabilizes. Cold soothes. Cold preserves. And not just people. Scrolls. Perfumes. Even certain types of ink were kept cool for better consistency. In the court of Darius the Great, there are records of artists requesting snow jars to store their paints before grand frescoes. because nothing ruins a royal mural like Guyoka. You pass a scribe hunched over his reed stylus, muttering about how the ink's too thick today. A boy runs up behind him and plops a small wrapped cube of snow beside the jar. Problem solved. And here's a fringe tidbit to round it all out. Some Persians believed that sound carried farther in cooler air, so poets would wait until evening, when the walls chilled, to perform. Whether that's physics or placebo, the result is the same: songs, verses, and epics reverberating through cool corridors beneath a star-drenched sky. So next time you grab a soda from the fridge or complain about the AC being on the wrong setting, just remember, you're standing on the shoulders of mud brick giants. Ice didn't just fall from the sky. It was planned, paid for, passed down, and at least once a year, partied around. You leave the city behind now, walking out past the final wind catchers that dot the skyline like solemn guardians of breeze and balance. The air is drier here, quieter. Fewer children laughing, more wind humming low across the dunes. And something about this part of the desert feels sacred. Not in the incense and chants way, but in the don't breathe too loud kind of sacred. Ahead, half buried beneath centuries of sand, is a crumbling structure that looks like it could have been anything: a fort, a shrine, or maybe just a particularly ambitious loaf of bread. But as you circle around it, your eyes adjust to its shape. It's another yakhchal. This one's different, though. Older. Warmer. Weathered down to a sleepy slope. You peer through a jagged opening in its side and see not ice, not straw, but bones. Okay, pause. Don't panic. No jump scares here. Just history doing what it does best, confusing you. This particular yakhchal sits near what scholars believe was once an ancient battlefield, possibly dating back to the early Achaemenid or even Median period. And while the structure was almost certainly used for ice at some point, the presence of skeletal remains has kicked off a flurry of debate. Historians still argue whether these were hasty battlefield burials, a later repurposing of the ice pit as a temporary crypt, or even part of some now lost funerary ritual involving cooling the dead. One theory, admittedly fringe, suggests bodies were chilled before being transported back to their families across the empire. Like an ancient refrigerated hearse. Whether true or not, the idea stuck around, half wrapped in academic papers, half whispered through archaeological folklore. And it opens a door to even stranger possibilities. Because if ice was precious enough to preserve lives, might it also have been used to preserve death? You step further into the structure. The air still carries a coolness. Not cold, just less warm. And in that strange twilight of temperature, you remember the tales that certain Persian nobles stored healing herbs and sacred scrolls inside yakhchals, believing that the stillness and chill would keep their potency intact. Some went further, claiming that divine messages were only legible in the cold, that ink shifted, shapes emerged, when touched by frost. Like a magical receipt, but for eternity. Was that superstition? Sure. Was it completely wrong? Maybe not. We know that certain dyes and minerals used in ancient inks, like iron gall or arsenic-based pigments, actually do change color when chilled. So that story about hidden messages in cold rooms might have been less Indiana Jones and more early chemistry. And what about food? You dig into a pit nearby, an ancient trash heap, really, and find something wrapped in rotted fibers and pressed into clay. At first, it looks like a bundle of rags, but under the layer of dust, it reveals itself, dried yogurt balls. These were common in ancient Persia, often sun-dried, but a few records suggest that people stored them in cold chambers to age the flavor, yes, like ancient cheese caves, but mud brick and desert approved. You sit beside the ruins and picture it all, children sneaking icy dates from a straw basket. Poets whispering sonnets beneath chilled domes. A dying man receiving his final dose of medicine from a sliver of mountain snow. And yet, we still barely understand how they did it all. Take the mystery of summer snow. Several Persian records mention rituals involving the pure snow of the fourth moon, which scholars believe refers to midsummer ice harvested from high mountain reserves and stored somehow in shaded chambers. How they got it there, over 200 miles in some cases, is anyone's guess. Did they use convoys of insulated camels? Did they bury the snow in pits lined with charcoal and straw? One text even claims they packed snow within snow, creating layered insulation that melted from the outside in. Sounds improbable. But then again, so does ice in a desert, and yet, here we are. You wander over to a rock ledge and look out across the sand. You can just make out the ghosts of old qanats, narrow depressions in the earth where water once flowed silently beneath your feet. They connected villages like capillaries, some running tens of kilometers, all by gravity alone. And those same qanats often fed into homes or cisterns that used wind catchers to cool the water, essentially creating underground air conditioners. Again, no electricity. No screws or fans. Just mud, math, and time. It's humbling, really. All those YouTube hacks about cooling your apartment with a wet towel and a fan. The Persians would have chuckled politely, handed you a goat hair brick mold, and told you to start mixing. Some sites even hint that the shape of yakhchals, those domes, wasn't just aesthetic or functional. There are ancient sketches, likely symbolic, that suggest the Persians believed the shape mirrored the sky, a kind of cosmic freezer aligning Earth with heaven. The dome preserved not just temperature, but order. And honestly, the more you sit here, the more you start to feel it. The wind brushing across the dunes, the low hum in your ears from the emptiness. This wasn't just refrigeration. This was resistance. A declaration against the cruelty of heat. Against the idea that the desert should always win. One last thought before we wind down. In modern-day Iran, some of these yakhchals are still standing. Not just as museum pieces or decayed relics. Some are still used for storing crops, cooling goods, or even housing community gatherings. Locals gather in the shade of walls made 2,000 years ago and sip tea brewed with water chilled in an old clay basin. Technology moves fast. But knowledge? Real knowledge, the kind that keeps you alive in the desert, moves deeper. So next time you open your freezer or tap the AC button in your car, remember the comfort you feel. It was dreamed up in a dome of mud, beneath a sky full of stars, by people who refuse to sweat quietly. You're still sitting at the edge of the dunes. The stars are blinking awake one by one, and the warmth of the day is finally ebbing from the sand beneath you. There's no rush here. Just a soft wind, a cooling hush, and a feeling like you've stepped out of time. You lean back, hands behind you, tracing lazy circles in the dust. The memory of that first ice cube, shocking and magical, lingers like a chill on the back of your neck. But now you understand. It wasn't magic. It was math. Wind. Water. Shadows. And a stubborn refusal to surrender to the sun. Out here, silence feels thick. Like the desert is holding its breath. You imagine the people who once stood where you are, brick dust in their beards, wind in their robes, eyes squinting at the angle of the breeze. They didn't just build things. They sold the desert. Layer by layer. Brick by brick. Frost by frost. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, take that quiet marvel with you. The knowledge that long before wires and humming machines, someone found a way to bring winter into summer. And maybe, just maybe, that thought will keep you cool.